our military members transition from service, we want them to envision new career possibilities.
Their tool bag is so full, they have no idea what's in it.
Right.
Because of the lexicon that they can't necessarily translate into what an executive in a civilian company on the other side of the table is going to understand.
Recently, IST welcomed a new partnership with Partnership for Your Success, or PaYS. And for Regional Operations Manager Charles Riddervold, this partnership is a full circle moment.
The importance of the program is really enormous for me after serving 28 years in the Army. Being able to give back to the Army as well as still enhance the employees that are coming to IST and enhance IST at the same time.
Being the company with passion takes leadership, takes empathy, takes a service-oriented mindset. Find out how IST recruits our military members and creates leaders on Outside In.
I think it is going to support not only soldiers transitioning, but it's going to give us a great stock of candidates that bring an immense amount of tools to the workplace, including customer service.
Howdy, howdy. Welcome to the podcast, Charlie.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you're on a trip from D.C., is that right?
That's correct.
Excellent.
Down to Atlanta to corporate headquarters.
Cool. So what's your favorite thing about being up in D.C.?
Oh my gosh. All the national monuments and certainly the Smithsonian.
Awesome. And obviously a lot of those national monuments pay a lot of tribute to our armed forces.
They do.
And you're here for an event with PaYS. Can you
Yes.
tell us what PaYS is?
Sure. PaYS stands for the Partnership for Your Success. It is a United States Army program that is dedicated to helping veterans transition from their military service or career over to a civilian career.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's a neat
So
program.
why is this program important to you?
The importance of the program is really enormous for me after serving 28 years in the Army. Being able to give back to the Army as well as still enhance the employees that are coming to IST and enhance IST at the same time, I think it just comes full circle for me, and that's the importance of it.
So PaYS is helping those Army vets as they transition out find professional jobs. Is that right?
Correct. So when a soldier enlists in the Army, they can select from multiple companies that are on that partnership, and they can say, I would like to interview with IST or another company when I leave the Army. For those folks that are in a reserve component or National Guard unit, they can actually interview as soon as they get back from training. And at any point in time during their career in the Army, they can change PaYS partners and they can look at different ones. And what we owe that applicant or that soldier is just an interview with us. It doesn't promise to place them anywhere, but we owe them an interview. And it's a nationwide program, so we could be talking to soldiers that are serving or planning on transitioning out to California or D.C. or New York or Atlanta, Georgia.
So obviously you witnessed this firsthand as you transition from the Army into the civilian world.
Sure.
What are some of the struggles that our vets face when making that transition?
I think a lot of it comes right down to language and understanding what does it look like for that soldier and their skill set? How do I translate that to a language that a civilian employer is going to understand? Mm-hmm. It's probably one of the biggest challenges there is. Our soldiers today and most veterans have an immense skill set that is really difficult for them to translate to a civilian employer. Hey, this is what I can do, or these are the kinds of conditions I've worked in and been able to thrive. So imagine taking that experience with all these difficulties and being able to apply it to your company or to the job that you're asking me to do as a civilian. I think that's the biggest piece. And then the Army and the military has never done a really great job at setting their soldiers up or their service members for transition. Mm-hmm. And this is one program out there of many that are out there, but it's the only program that's actually run by a Department of Defense entity, being the United States Army. So the Navy does not have this, Marine Corps, Air Force, none of the other services have. I wish they did. But the Army does have it, and it's been around, I think, since the early 90s.
So why do you think having it run by a Department of Defense versus a private organization or another government organization, but that's not tied with our defense, what advantages does that make?
Access, I think. So you have because it's run by the Department of the Army, and because the PaYS partnership gives every soldier that opportunity to link up with a PaYS partner when they first enlist in the Army or when they commission out of ROTC. It's access to those soldiers that are going to be transitioning out at some point in time, or if they're Reserve or National Guard, they'll be available right after their training.
One of the keys to any partnership is that it's good for both parties.
That's right.
Understand why it's good for the Army and for those Army vets. How's it benefit IST?
I think that what it does is it really gives us a set of employees where they're a known commodity. So again, I'll go back to that language piece. If we can get our operations teams, our recruiters, our executives to understand just what those values that those transitioning service members bring, then all of a sudden it opens a door to say, okay, I will have somebody that's going to show up to work on time, that's going to value showing up to work on time. More than likely, I'm going to have somebody that's drug-free and won't have any problems passing a background test, background check. The service members understand that a dress code needs to be adhered to. They seem like small little things, but they're really huge in our world from an operations perspective.
So I see on that operations, absolutely. They're used to taking orders. They show up on time. They got a great, or they know how to dress appropriately and be professional. IST is all about customer service, and while I'm sure customer service, and you're about to tell me because that's where the question's leading about how the Army is great at customer service, from a civilian side that's never been in the military, we have this view of the armed forces that's much more dogmatic, much more direct, and doesn't have that warm fuzzies of customer service. So how is that a misconception?
I think it is a misconception. I think that there's a lot of movies out there from cover World War II and all those previous periods and all the conflicts we've been in, and they really do present that dogmatic, follow orders to a T type of person that serves in the military. After doing 28 years, I can tell you that it is. There are times when it seems like that. Maybe initial entry training for most service members is very dogmatic. Once you learn your job, just like a videographer, just like a marketing person, just like a human resources person, a lot of the dogmatic stuff goes away, and you really have to learn how to lead people. We would be in great shape if we were able to pull more leaders out of the Army and put them into the leadership ranks of our company, because they do understand not only different levels of leadership, but they understand how it has to change. What am I trying to say? I don't treat everyone the same. And it's not because I did 28 years in the Army and that I'm a dogmatic leader. It's because I understand that people are going to react differently to different leadership styles. So I adjust my leadership style based on what the person is doing and what we have to get done. Sometimes it may be a little quicker and a little more direct, but more often than not, it's filled with empathy and understanding that that's a human being on the other side of the table that we have to lead to a place where we want them, which is, like you said, into customer service.
I love that you're talking about leadership, because that's another one of those misconceptions about the military, is that it's all about just taking orders, but it's really so much more than that. And even at IST, and a company at IST that's so focused on customer service, you have to have leadership at every level, and you have to have, like you said, leadership that leads with empathy, that understands what the person that they're giving the order to is going through, and also that the person that's giving them orders. And so the military really creates that bond extremely well. So I can see how that translates great.
Yeah, and think about this for a minute. I mean, you're a vice president. I'm a regional operations manager. How many formal leadership schools have you been to?
Right.
The answer is probably very low, if not zero.
For me, and the best leadership I ever did was Boy Scouts. And it put me in leadership opportunities at a young age when you're not given those, because they set up in these small groups and everything's all these different leaderships. And I took so many skills from that. But since then, it's been on the job training. It's been falling back to those resources. There's never been, like you said, that formal training.
Yeah. And I mean, my experience in the Army was 6 different leadership schools during that 28 years. And they were formal. The shortest one was 4 weeks, where you're embedded. And
Right.
that's all you're doing is learning about leadership at that particular level. So one of the things that I think that the Army does well, and I'm sure many of the other branches do as well, I know they do, is they take training and they take leadership training very seriously, because it's life or death decisions that some of these people are going to have to make. And those benefit the civilian world in a million different ways. Like I said, if you're able to come out from the service and transition into a great leadership role, the tools that you bring with you, and I tell this to all of my friends that are transitioning out and looking for civilian work, their tool bag is so full, they have no idea what's in it.
Right.
Because of the lexicon that they can't necessarily translate into what an executive in a civilian company on the other side of the table is going to understand.
Right. And so does PaYS, beyond having that partnership where they're setting up with companies, do they have trainings and classes for those individuals to understand how to translate that onto a resume, how to translate that into an interview?
They do. So during and the Army's gotten a lot better at this over the years, but during their last year in the Army, if they're doing active duty, they go through a transition program. And PaYS is highlighted in the transition program, as well as resume writing, things of that nature. So they really do try to help those soldiers transition out with their PaYS partner, ensure that they're linking up with their PaYS partner, things like that. So yeah, there's a huge focus on it, and there's been a big focus on it since the global war on terror, to help these service members transition out into meaningful jobs on the outside.
Right. And like you said, that lexicon's so important, because, I mean, just 10 minutes ago, as we were getting the podcast rolling up, the production team yelled out a command that I didn't understand the lexicon, and then I blinded myself by looking at a light. And even though that's small, when you're in that interview, if you have that small glitch on understanding what that person's asking, it can cause you not to get that position, them to look at you differently. So
Exactly
preparing them to understand that lexicon to be able to transition is huge.
Yep.
So obviously this partnership with IST is new, and we're on the ground running with it. When we come back here, if we meet again in a year, what would this partnership, being successful, what would that look like to you?
It's a great question. I think success with PaYS would be to see new employees at IST from anywhere in the country. In fact, I'd love to see it all over the country. And whether it's a service specialist, site supervisors, site manager level, even some, if we hire operations managers, I think that's another great place to look. So success to me would be having at least 10, 15, 20 hires right from the PaYS program.
Yeah.
It really would. And I guess the follow-on question that I would ask myself is, what is it going to take to get there? What does that roadmap kind of look like?
Yeah, and I think part of that roadmap is being able to then highlight and celebrate those victories when we bring someone in.
Sure.
Reaching out to marketing and saying, hey, this lady's doing fantastic and she came from this program. Can you highlight her and let the other ops managers, as other site managers, other hiring people see what success we've had with her, so that when this gentleman over here comes to them from that program, they're even more eager to have that communication.
Yep. No, I agree. And it kind of leads into the whole larger program of what are we doing as a company for a veteran hiring program? PaYS is part of it. GEMS, which is our military mil-spouse hiring program, that's another part of it, right? So it's all these little fingers that lead into the overall veteran hiring program that I think is going to support not only soldiers transitioning, but it's going to give us a great stock of candidates that bring an immense amount of tools to the workplace, including customer service.
Absolutely. One of the big themes of our podcast at Outside In is creativity, and I think you've kind of really started already touch on why creativity is important, and one of those areas is finding creative ways to hire. So how did the idea for this partnership arise?
Great question. So I spent my last 11 years in the Army in United States Army Recruiting Command. I was a recruiter, station commander. I was a master trainer at two recruiting brigades, and we were linked up with the PaYS program quite a bit back then. There wasn't as much focus on it as there is now, and I retired about 10 years ago. But we would typically go to these PaYS partnership ceremonies like we have here, and we would be included in those. At the time, I was also a U.S. Army Reserve recruiter, and being a reserve recruiter was a little bit different than being an active duty recruiter. An active duty recruiter, their folks join and they go away for 2, 3, 4 years, and then they come back to their marketplace or they stay in the service that they're in. For reserve component and for any reserve component recruiter, when you're recruiting somebody, they go out and they do their training, and they come right back to a reserve unit that's right there in your market. So one of the things I had to learn was, number one, I had to really take care of and be very empathetic to the people that I was putting in the Army Reserve, so that when they came back, I wasn't just giving them an Army job. I was trying to figure out, how do I get them a good civilian job so that they can stay in the Army Reserve and have a good civilian career. PaYS was part of that when I was a recruiter, but it was on the other end of it because I was in the Army. So now, kind of full circle, here I am, and I employ a good amount of people. I think our region probably hired 25 or 30 people last year, and that's probably about every year. Boy, would I love to have 10, 50%, 60% of those be veterans that we bring into the fold into IST.
Just talking on the reserves for a second.
Sure.
So one of the things our clients, as you know, are looking for is stability and staffing.
Sure.
Stability that they're going to have that team, because when you have stability, you have higher level of customer service. There's that fear anytime you hear reserves that I don't have stability. So how do you, as an operations manager, approach that client to let them know, one, that that's not necessarily true, and two, that when that person does have to go to active duty, IST is still going to be able to support their needs without it causing a problem?
Right. No, it's a great question, and I've had to explain it before with a few hires that we've had that are in the reserve. I do have some current serving reservists in the region, and we explain it beforehand to the client. Listen, we know they're going to be doing 1 weekend a month. We know that they're going to do a minimum of a 2-week annual training sometime during the year. A lot of times it's summertime, but it may not be. And it's incumbent upon us as the employer and operations team to make sure that we have that person covered when they're out on their annual training, or should they get deployed. If they get deployed, they're obviously going to be gone a little bit longer than a couple of weeks. So I think it's just a matter of explaining it to the client the way it really is and how much we support this program and support people serving in the National Guard or one of the reserve components of the United States military, that we're going to be there and we're going to make sure that that person's position is covered when they're out.
And how does IST cover those positions?
We cover them with what we call an on-call star, or we cover them with what some companies may consider a floater or a part-time person, maybe even a full-time person that's able to come in and fill that position.
But luckily, with the reserves, you know when those trainings are coming well in advance. You know when those weekends are happening, so you have that ability to schedule that so that client's not feeling anything.
That's correct. And I mean, a 2-week annual training is no more than a 2-week vacation for a lot of people. So it should have the same impact. Sometimes it doesn't. You got to talk through that.
Right.
But easy to talk through. And as long as I'm in the region, I'm certainly going to be able to articulate the benefits of it. And I think my operations team has done pretty well at understanding it too, because we have quite a few reservists in the region, and they work in different accounts, and it's been great. And not just Army. We have a Navy reservist out in Virginia. It hits all services. Again, I think it comes down to leadership style. Can you be empathetic to what the issues are? Can you be empathetic to where people are coming from, what their skill sets are? Do you have the right people in the room? It's always solutions-based. the conversations. And it's done with empathy, understanding that operations is in the thick of it all the time, and they have some pretty, sometimes you have some challenging clients, and that's okay. They should challenge us. But corporate support understands the position that operations is in, and they're always there to help. So it's multifaceted for sure. There was a Russian general not long after Desert Shield, Desert Storm, that said about the American Army, one of the reasons we'll never beat them is because they don't follow their own field manuals, which is true.
Right.
Everybody learns the right way to do things, but they understand that when you're in the thick of it, you got to pull back. You got to look at what's going on and make a decision that might be different from what that manual might be telling you, but you have a mission to accomplish, and your ultimate goal is to win. So transition that into IST and civilian leadership and client management. It's the same thing. We might write it up one way, how we think it should go, but you have to have the ability to pull back, have a look at the situation, and make the right call to move the ball forward. If you're not willing to do that, makes it tough to be a leader in this organization, any organization really.
And I think all of this comes back to what we've talked about this whole entire conversation. Having great partnerships to bring in great employees that know how to act, understand empathy, understand customer service, and then pairing them up with great technology that's been designed to be customized so that it can meet each client's needs.
Right.
Awesome. Charlie, that's all I got for you. I just want to thank you for your time. I know you got a busy schedule while you're here in Atlanta, so thank you for giving us some time for this.
Yeah, no, it's been a great conversation. Love talking to you, and
awesome.
Let's do it again.
Absolutely.
All right.
And next time I'll bring bourbon.
Next time, bourbon.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you to our production team, Lance Gardner, Amy Godwin, Lacey Pepe, Eric Price, Jose Ruiz Velasco, and Eric Willis. To learn more about IST Management Solutions and how we can benefit your business, check out istmanagement.com and follow us on LinkedIn. To hear more Outside In, subscribe on your preferred listening platform.